Welcome back to Laurence McKenna channel in the festive period where it is good to hear a lot of people who were Arteta critics eating their words. And I say that as a Liverpool fan who is one of the main teams chasing Arsenal's 5-point lead down at the top of the Premier League table after a 4-3 away last-minute winner at Luton. Luton, which, by the way, I think is one of the hardest grounds in the Premier League to go to. A lot of people obviously say that Luton may go down, and that may be the end result. But it doesn't mean they're not going to challenge a lot of big teams this season, and they haven't already challenged teams such as Liverpool at Kenilworth Road and gotten decent results. Title-deciding results. So when Arsenal went to 3-3, so late on in the game, and I say late on, like it was relatively, they had time to salvage something, time to turn it around. Even when they went to 3-2 down, you kind of got that feeling it was one of those nights. Even though Arsenal had put up so much quality, even though all of the goals have been so Arsenal this season, you just got the feeling that Luton were going to get something. And it was mainly because the eye test is quite a weird one with Luton. And the eye test is something that I think this Arsenal team have struggled with for a little while now, especially from the end of last season into the beginning of this season. A lot of people have taken some time to try and decipher what it is that Mikel Arteta is doing. Some people have very successfully deciphered elements of the team, not necessarily the whole system. Although, if you ask TDK, I would say those guys have done a very good job, and other Arsenal channels have done a good job. But broadly, I think a lot of people are still wrestling with who's Mikel Arteta's preferred starting 11? Who's Mikel Arteta's preferred midfield now that Xhaka, Partey, and a few other people are kind of not in the picture anymore? Who is Mikel Arteta's preferred back line if he can't have Jurriën Timber at left back, right back, or centre back, or central midfield? Who is his preferred goalkeeper? If those two are both competing, then, well, what's happening next? All of these are big questions that in games like the Luton game come to a head. And a number of questions I think would have been asked of Mikel Arteta this evening if he'd have allowed points to slip out of his fingers so easily, especially when Arsenal look like they're so silky. Things are clicking for them at this point in the season. I kind of always go back to the midfield with Arsenal. I think there is so much in that midfield to analyse. And I think, first of all, you've got to look and give credit to Declan Rice, but also the guy who, if you drew a line through the middle of the team, would be one of his equals. Gabriel Jesus, however you want to say it. These two guys were so critical to everything that was going on this evening. And I will get on to the other guys who bolstered that and did other good roles. Some people on Twitter saying they thought that Kai Havertz had one of his best games, if not his best game, in an Arsenal shirt so far. But really, with the amount of coverage of what Rice did and the coverage of what Gabriel Jesus did, the assists, but by the way, the deft assists in a situation where there is very high pressure, laying it off to the other guy I'll talk about in a second, Kai Havertz. And on top of that, the goal, which was fantastic in the first place, kind of a classic Premier League goal, one that you probably wouldn't have necessarily characterised a Gabriel Jesus goal as. You would, but when you think of him, you don't think of these kind of bundling, kind of, I'm in at the back, it's not really the back post, but you get what I mean? I'm in this area, get it on my head. He's just one of those players. And he's someone who feels talismanic almost at this point to Arsenal. And I say that knowing that Arsenal kind of want to avoid talismanic type players within the team because of what happened last season. But there are so many talismen within this side now that it doesn't feel quite the same. And in fact, I kind of want to find the right word for it. It's not a grit to Arsenal. It's not. Genuinely. I think Luton are a team that play with grit. They're a team who have grit in the midfield along with Ross Barkley, right? Arsenal play with a level of control, belief, distribution. And I want to say, I think desire is just too broad. But you get what I mean? If you combine all of those things, what you get is that Arsenal midfield. Now, that doesn't mean that it's perfectly balanced. It does mean it's there to be exploited. Even though tonight, I think Declan Rice did a really great job covering predominantly the midfield area behind Odegaard and Kai Havertz. I think what Odegaard and Kai Havertz offer is similar to what we're seeing in a couple of other sides at the moment. So the Man City team, the Liverpool team, any team that seems to be competing at the top level, what Newcastle wanted from someone like Tonali, what they get very often from someone like Bruno Guimaraes, if he has someone to support him alongside him, is coverage, is a busyness, is a level of availability when on the ball, and a level of willingness to win the ball back off the ball that in previous years, you would have said, hey, that is a number eight's job, but in very specific areas. These guys now have to be all over the field, constantly reading the game. And it's much easier to do that with someone like Declan Rice immediately behind you. It's not a criticism of Thomas Partey, who may be off in January away from Arsenal for multiple reasons, and possibly because Arsenal just want to move on tactically, if not for other reasons. But the point is, if you have an adaptable midfield that are bolstered by someone like Declan Rice, you're going to have a much stronger defence. Now, arguably, Arsenal are now level. I think actually they're 1 point better off than Liverpool's goal difference, but they have an equal goals conceded record. So it's not as if they have by far the best defence in the midfield, though at one point it was very good, right? But they have a good defence. A lot of people are crediting the centre-back partnership. I credit the man who immediately goes ahead of that. His reading of the game, his bossing of the game, his shepherding of the game. Shepherding is something that goes massively underrated because there are very few stats as to where your shadow goes on the field. Where you put your influence isn't always through a tackle, isn't always through... I mean, pressing is very hard to read in the first place, but you get where I'm going with this, right? That's what Declan Rice brings. That's what Kai Havertz brings. That is what Odegaard brings very high up the field. And what it enables is someone like Gabriel Jesus to drop back a little bit, to be able to be the facilitator higher up, because you have a facilitator slightly differently. I always felt like Thomas Partey was much more of a, like, if you're going climbing and you like drill one of your, it's not a cramp, you drill something into the wall that if you fall off, it will keep you there. That's what Thomas Partey felt like. Declan Rice feels much more like someone else climbing the wall alongside you and constantly being an option, constantly saying, we're free climbing, but don't worry, you're as good as I am. Like, you're an option, I'm an... Like, that is much more of the way this Arsenal side feel now, right? And that is in front of, by the way, Kivior, who some people obviously love, but some people are rumoured to think he's going in January, which is still a possibility, I guess. And alongside Saka and even Martinelli, even Trossard at different points, and even alongside, I mean, Ben White is incredibly good defensively, but I think at the start of the season, if you'd have said that would have been those units, you would have said, well, I think Urian Timber will be one of those starting guys. And what I mean by that is, right, and go with me here, if you'd have said at the start of the season, Kivior will be one of the preferred players over, or because there's an injured player, you're going, okay, well, Mikel Arteta might put some of his plans on ice. Mikel Arteta might have to progress in a slightly different way. There is a pragmatism now to this Arsenal team which people didn't feel they saw before. There is an adaptability. There is a willingness. There is a basis from which they built last season, which they're now drawing from this season. During the period when a lot of people were criticising them, during the period when everyone was trying to make them the laughing stock, trying to say that they, stumbled, choked, whatever you want to say, that was actually a period of intense learning for Arsenal, and a period that now is showing with experience. First of all, is showing that Arsenal in this period can go away to a very difficult side, which is a derby, but isn't really a derby, right? Even though it's North London and Luton, And they're also showing that they know that they've got this in their bag. Even though Luton looked so confident, even though it was so open, the technical difference between what Arsenal can achieve and what Luton can achieve on a wider level, I know there are some players within the Luton side that are very capable, but you get what I'm saying, is vast. And it proved it so late on. Now, what I heard late on in the commentary on 5 Live, and I thought it was good observation, but what was good commentary was they won't have bought Declan Rice necessarily because of the goals specifically. But what he does bring in those moments where you want to exert more pressure, what he does bring with his £105 million price tag, what he does bring because you spent almost as much as Jude Bellingham was bought for to go to Real Madrid, is an adaptability, is a level of confidence, is a level of modern football that I think a lot of people would have paid the £105 million for, that Man City would have paid the money for if they'd have had the chance to tempt him there, that playing Mikel Arteta and having a manager as Mikel Arteta gives you so much progress. Like, look at the difference between how good Declan Rice was at West Ham, exceptional, but also the extra assets that he's added to his game since coming to Arsenal. Tell me there isn't, it doesn't even have to be like a marked difference. It's just an observable difference in, it's not even the level of coaching, it's just the kind of coaching that Mikel Arteta is giving to Declan Rice. These small differences, these small tweaks are the exact thing that people like Kai Havertz are also benefiting from. Now, I said earlier in the video I thought he had one of his best games. Other people have also said the same thing. Obviously, I'm inclined to agree because it was one of my observations in the first place. I've been a big fan of Kai Havertz for some time anyway, and I think Kai Havertz deserves more credit for A, picking another side that was always going to be a difficult transfer in the first place, but B, picking a side where it was going to be a challenging position from the off anyway. He essentially in this game was playing as a shadow striker / deep, like he's not a false nine because of what Gabriel Jesus is doing, but he is an adaptable midfielder running into those kind of 17 and 18 pitch positions, which is like just in front of the penalty area, and trying to get on the end of things as Arsenal go wide and then work it back in. When you looked at what he did before, all the hook-up play, all those kind of things, that was all fantastic. But at the same time, I think a lot of people were wondering if that was as productive as Arsenal could be, if it wasn't better in what they would have found in the long term was this progress of Kai Havertz, of having the balance of being a presence and winning the ball back, but also being influential, but being confident in that influence, and knowing that his influence was going to be seen over the 90 minutes and not in that one moment where you had to win the ball back or do X, Y, do Y, or do Z, right? Even though, obviously, we've seen some great moments from him this evening, and I think he's a fantastic player, and I think on an individual basis, he has the ability to change games. What I'm saying is I think his broad influence is a much more telling one than just moment, right? And I think we're seeing that. What I do think it does also show is Arsenal conceded 3 goals. That's a high amount of goals for this Arsenal team to concede. They'd only conceded 11 up to this point in the season, and you know how many games they've played. They were on to be one of the best defences, if not the best defence this season in the Premier League. Now they're level with, or not far off, and they're level with other teams defensively, but their goal difference is better, right? So it's things like that where I get it, like Arsenal's exertion of control on the field should have been better this evening. There should be criticism for the fact that Ross Barkley was able to get a shot away. There should be criticism for Raya, the ball slipping under him. He should have got down much quicker. There will be criticism of those things. But you can afford, I think you can afford to have games like this if you have such a successful attack at the other end and you have something which you can just push forward with. A Declan Rice who can shift between defence and attack so easily. Kai Havertz who can put the emphasis in attack but can give you a very high press or a high influence. The same with Martin Odegaard. Martin Odegaard, by the way, going massively underrated. I saw a brilliant compilation today, actually, of his first-time finishes. I can't remember which Arsenal influencer it was that posted it. But first-time finishes, just go watch them. Just search Martin Odegaard first-time finishes, and it is insane. I don't think Arsenal had the best defensive night. Obviously, they conceded 3 goals to Luton at Kenilworth Road. That's not a great defensive night. The debate rages on as to who Arsenal will go with in the long term. I think if Raya had come in and Ramsdale had gone, the debate wouldn't be so much. But it is. I'd love to know what Arsenal fans think. Personally, I think they've got to stick with Raya. Mainly just because he's the guy they brought in. That makes logical sense, right? And I think he is their long-term option. But I'd love to know what people think in the comments below. I thought Kivior was fine. I think Ben White was fine. I actually think it was better than fine, actually. And I'm enjoying watching Saka and whoever plays on the opposite wing evolving in their roles this season, because it seems to be something that Mikel Arteta is taking real pleasure in. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. I'll chat to you in a little while. Much love. Good evening, Arsenal fans. If you've not already hit subscribe, hit it right now, and I'll chat to you again right here on the Laurence McKenna channel again in a little while. Much love.